Court proceedings are about to resume this morning. Let's listen in together.
And that's the first with the exception of the officer in charge.
Thank you, Judge. And just on that point as well, I did notice when I came into the courtroom this morning that former DPS officer Derek Wolf, who is now working at 36, was in the courtroom. He stated he would not be in the courtroom, but just because we'll be facing this way, you can keep, or your staff can keep an eye on that. I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think he's fully aware, just so that the court is aware of that as well.
Okay, I did see him, and he's no longer in here.
He's not in here.
So I can see the door, so I will make sure that he's not.
Thank you, Judge. And then the second preliminary matter is that the people have moved to admit people's proposed Exhibit 61, which is the subscriber information for the phone number ending in 8719 that Sergeant O'Rourke testified to, as well as the underlying raw data that she testified to as well. And it is certified under 8036 and 90211.
Any objection?
No objection.
Okay. That's Exhibit 61, correct?
That's correct, Judge. Thank
Okay,
you.
it will be admitted.
Thank you. And with that, the people are ready to call the first witness.
Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you, Judge. At this time, people will call Detective Lisa Johnson.
Good morning. Good morning. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Whenever you're ready, Ms. Ripley.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning. Could you please state your name for the record?
Good morning, Detective Lisa Johnson,
And how are you employed?
Detroit Police Department,
And how long have you been employed by Detroit Police Department?
26 years.
And are you assigned to a specific unit or division?
Right now, homicide cold case.
Detective Johnson, can you pull that microphone down so that everyone can hear? Thank you.
And were you working back in February of 2024 in the homicide cold case?
Yes,
And did you get the chance to assist in the investigation of, at that time, missing Messiah Harris?
I did.
Okay. And I want to take you to the location of 20,000 Harbor. Okay. You're assisting in the investigation, take you to that location.
Yes.
And what is that location?
Park Crest Hotel.
Okay. And do you recall when about you went there?
Sometime in February.
Okay. And it's in 2004?
Yeah,
2024?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you went there, what is it that you did?
We spoke to the clerk that was on duty at the time, and we requested the ledger for January.
And did you receive anything from the ledger from January?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And what is it that you received?
There was a sign-in sheet filled out by Mr. Butts.
Okay. And did you take a copy of that sign-in sheet?
Yes.
Okay. And Your Honor, may I approach People's Proposed Exhibit 19?
Yes.
Thank you. Handing you what's marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 19. Can you tell me, do you recognize what it is I just handed you?
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of the receipt that you received from the Park Crest Inn as it relates to Mr. Butts?
Yes, it is.
And I move for the admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 19. No objection.
Okay, it'll be admitted as People's 19.
Thank you, Judge. And looking at that receipt, who is it that checked out a room?
Jarvis R. Butts.
And is there a address associated with that?
Yes, there is.
And without reading the numbers of the address, what street is that on?
Wilshire Drive.
And is there a phone number associated with that person?
Yes, it is.
And what's that phone number?
313-585-8719.
Okay. And what is the day that this hotel room was checked out?
January 9th, 2024.
Okay. And is there a room number that was checked out?
Yes, room 69.
Okay. And is there a time that it was checked out?
Checked out at 12:30 p.m.
And is there a check-out date?
That was the checkout time.
So-
Check-in was 9:30 p.m.
Okay. Thank you. everything with this receipt once you received it?
Yes, we got the receipt and we forwarded it to Sergeant Jones.
And was this physical receipt itself placed on evidence?
Yes.
Nothing further, Judge.
Okay, cross.
Thank you.
Detective Johnson, you said that when you went to the Park Crest Motel, you spoke with the clerk.
Yes.
Was that clerk, the clerk that was there themselves on the night?
I don't believe so. We spoke with the clerk who forwarded us to the manager. We waited on the manager to come in. He brought the receipt out.
Did either the clerk or the manager that you spoke with indicated that they had any recollection of seeing Mr. Butts on the night?
No.
Okay. Did you spoke with anybody at the Park Crest Motel who did seem to indicate that they had familiarity with Mr. Butts?
Not for that particular night. A few people said they may have seen him prior, but not for sure.
Did you get the impression that he's kind of a frequent flyer there?
Somewhat, yes.
Okay. Did you notice when you were there if there were any cameras in the parking lot or around the door?
Yes, there's cameras.
If there's cameras, where are they located?
I can't be specific right now. I know there was cameras in the lobby and there are some outside on the perimeter.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any redirect?
Nothing further, Judge.
Okay, we all set, thank you.
Thank you.
Judge, at this time, people would call Detective Sarah Markle.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Why don't you step, please?
Can you state your name for the record?
Yes, Sarah Markle.
And how are you employed today?
I am a detective with the Detroit Police Department.
And I want to take your attention back to January of 2024. At that time, were you assigned to a specific division within the Detroit Police Department?
Yes, back then I was assigned to major crimes homicide.
And what was your role in major crimes homicide at that time?
To do phone extractions,
And is that something you did on a regular basis?
it was.
And would you extract upwards of 1,000 phones a year?
Yes, I was averaging around 2,000 phones per year.
Something that you were trained to do at that time and are trained to do?
Yes,
Okay. Were you provided with multiple devices in this case relating to the investigation into the death of Ms. Harris?
I was.
And who provided you those devices, or which unit provided you those devices primarily?
Homicide.
Okay. Specifically, cold case or missing persons?
The missing persons squad within homicide, yes.
Okay. And just very briefly, can you talk about what a phone extraction or forensic extraction is from a cell phone?
Yes, so to put it in just very simple terms, it is making a copy of everything that's within a device. It's using special software in order to do that, to make sure that the information or that copy is done in a secure manner. But it is just making a copy, connecting the phone to the software program on a computer and making a copy of anything that is inside the phone.
And does that include things like messages, user accounts, photos, videos, things like that?
Correct.
And contacts that the
Yes,
person had? Okay.
yes.
And is there a way that you go about that process that allows yourself or the OIC or prosecutor or defense attorney to be able to view and understand what the data that was on the phone?
Yes, so when the extraction is done, the report is put into what's called the Celebrate Reader program. The Reader program is provided to the officer in charge of the case, and a copy is put on evidence. That program that contains all of the information from the extraction is the reviewable format or copy that anybody can look at who has the actual report.
And so after it's put into that readable format, anyone would be able to go in and click around and see different dates and times and things like that of when things were sent or received?
Yes.
Okay. And does that also include something called a preliminary device report?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's just the basic information about the device that was extracted. So you'll get the identifying information on that device, the phone number, the IMEI, those types of basic identifying information.
And in this case, you did multiple phones, but in particular, did you do a phone with the last 4 digits for the phone number 2510, if you remember?
It sounds familiar. I could verify the actual exact number if I could see my supplement.
May I approach Judge?
Yes.
If you could take a look at that, detective, and then look back up at me when your memory's refreshed.
Yeah, 2510 are the last 4.
And was there a name associated with that account?
Yes.
And what was that name?
Well, with the phone, yes.
With the phone, yes, sorry.
Yes, that was a consent from Jarvis Butts.
And you said consent, what do you mean by that?
That the owner of the device consented to a forensic search of the phone.
And you need consent or a search or a valid signed search warrant to do your job, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you performed an extraction and placed an extraction on evidence for that phone number and that account or that device?
I did.
At this time, Judge, I would move to admit the full extraction as Exhibit 57, People's Proposed 57.
I didn't hear you.
No objection.
Okay, it will be admitted as People's Exhibit 57.
And may I approach again, Judge?
Yes.
I'm handing you what's been marked as People's Proposed 58. Take that back. Just for identification purposes, Detective, is that the preliminary device report associated with the device for Jarvis Butts?
Yes, the
First 2 pages.
first 2 pages are.
And that includes the number on there ending in 2510?
It does.
And that includes your name on there as well?
Correct.
May I approach again, Judge?
Yes.
And Detective, another device that you extracted in this case, was that for a phone number ending, or for the full number of 313-585-8719?
Yes.
And what was the name associated with that phone?
That was done through a search warrant.
And was there a person, a name associated with that phone, if you remember?
No, so if it's a search warrant phone, there isn't a name that I would attach to it.
Okay. But that was the number on the cell phone number was ending in 8719?
Correct.
And did you do that same process and perform and place an extraction on evidence for that phone as well?
Yes.
At this time, Judge, I would move to admit proposed exhibit 43, which would be the extraction for the phone number ending in 8719.
No objection, Your Honor.
It'll be admitted as People's 43.
And may I approach one more time?
Yes.
Approaching with what's been marked as People's Proposed 45. You recognize what I just handed you, Detective?
Yes,
And is that the preliminary device report for the phone number ending in 8719?
it is.
Move to admit people's proposed 45.
Any objection?
No objection.
It'll be admitted as People's 45.
And very quickly, Detective, I want to direct your attention, well, let me ask you this. Are there user accounts included in the preliminary device report?
Yes, this isn't the user account section, but within the device information, there is an Apple ID account associated with it.
Okay, and if you could flip, I think it's on the 5th page of that 10-page document.
I'm sorry, you said page 5?
Do you see user accounts later in that document on subsequent pages?
Yes, on page 7.
7, sorry, thank you. And I want to direct your attention to the user account section go to line 20.
Yes,
And is there a user account listed on line 20 for an email?
there is.
And what kind of email is that?
It's a Gmail?
And is there the actual email address listed in that section as well?
Yes.
And what's the email address for the Google or Gmail account?
Jarvis Butts 82@gmail.com.
And going to line just a couple down on 24, is there an account listed on line 24 of the user account section?
Yes.
And what is that for?
This is an Instagram ID account.
And is there a user ID or a username associated with that Instagram account?
There is.
And can you read that?
J Bo back to the money.
And is that all one word?
It is.
And then is each Instagram account associated with a unique identifying number?
Yes.
And is that number, that unique identifying number listed on line 24 that you're looking at right now?
Yes, in the second column, there it says user ID.
And just read those numbers for the record.
262854051.
And just in general, in preliminary device reports, are some contacts that was in the phone listed as well? Maybe not in all of them, but does that happen in some preliminary device reports? Or can it?
Well, not in the preliminary device report is just specific to the device information. So in other sections of the phone extraction, there would be other information.
Contacts that the person entered into the phone or communicated
Yes,
with?
yes, that would just be in different areas, not in the preliminary device information.
May I have one moment?
Yes.
And just a couple questions based on your experience performing phone extractions. Is it possible to recover things that have been deleted from the phone?
It is.
Okay, and is that a guarantee that you're always going to get all of the deleted content from a phone?
No.
Can you just talk about that very briefly?
So there's any number of variables that could impact the ability to get deleted information. So it could be make, model of the phone, the software version of the phone, whether or not that phone is supported on the equipment used, a number of different things, if we have the passcode or not. I mean, the possibilities are long.
And does someone going into their phone and actually deleting like a text message or photo affect whether it's going to be recovered?
Yes, it can.
Where, after someone deletes like a text message, for example, where would that go into the phone, where it may or may not still be able to be recovered?
So it depends again on what the make and model of the phone is and what the version is. Because the phones change all the time with different updates, it could be in different places. Usually it would go into like an unallocated space or into the trash can where the user can't see it, but it could still be in that trash can or in the deleted files on the phone that the user doesn't necessarily see, but would still be available possibly through an extraction.
And that's not, is that a guarantee that if they're there, they'll be recovered, or is that trash can or unallocated space overwritten as time goes on?
It can't, well, so there are no guarantees. It can be overwritten. It may not be an area that, it may not be a device that's supported to attempt to recover deleted. So it could be any, there are never any guarantees with it. There's a lot of variables that would play into the abilities.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Judge. Thank you.
Okay, Ross?
Good morning, Detective Martin.
Good morning.
And you say that at the time you were assigned to phone extraction,
Correct.
have you been reassigned since then?
Yes.
Okay, where are you currently assigned?
The 3rd precinct,
Any particular division?
the investigative unit, the precinct detective unit.
Okay. So on this particular case, your job was strictly phone extraction.
Correct.
You did no investigation on this case, correct?
Correct.
And I think you testified on direct that you received several phones. Do you know how many phones you received in this case?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay. Did anyone in particular order you to do the extraction on the phone?
Well, that was, at that time, my only position at homicide. So to order me or to just do what
In
my...
this particular case, did the OIC say here, these phones are particular possible evidence in this case? So was there an order to extract the evidence in this phone, in these cases?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by order. Like, did somebody order, like verbally tell me to do something, or are you talking about a search warrant order?
To search these phones. You were just your overall duties, you just searched the phones?
Well, I do the extraction, the data extraction on the phone.
Okay. Were you told a particular suspect to look out for on this case?
No, I don't have information on the case. I do the extractions and then return the reports to the officer in charge or the or that team that is working on the case.
Okay. So you extracted all the information from the phone, and I think you've already testified. You used Cellbrite to download the information?
Yeah, Cellbrite was Cellbrite was the main tool
Okay.
that was used.
And I think you already testified that there are times that you don't get all the information.
Correct.
It may not be a complete download.
Correct.
You may get pieces, but other parts we just don't have. Correct?
That is always a possibility.
Okay. And you turned over all the reports.
Correct.
And I think you testified that for the phone number ending 8719,
Yes.
you downloaded the information from that. Did you get a passcode for that?
If I could see the supplement that I did for that, I could let you know.
May I approach you, Honor?
Yes.
Is this your supplemental report, yeah? Detective?
Yes. And the 8719, there was a passcode provided.
Okay. So you did not have to, like the proper term, break into the phone.
Correct.
The passcode was provided.
Yes.
Where'd you get the passcode from?
From the officer in charge when the phone was dropped off.
think you testified that you found a couple of emails, correct? And that phone?
Yeah,
Email accounts.
in that device, in the preliminary device information, it gives that basic information about the accounts or Apple ID.
It doesn't give you information on who was using the phone, I mean, using those email addresses, correct?
Correct,
So there's no way of knowing who used those accounts, correct?
correct.
And of course, there is no way to know who was using the phone when the data was created in the phone, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, I have no further questions.
I have nothing further to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's fine. Before you call your next witness, I want to check on a couple other cases.
They come out right for,
The waiver?
yes, first. Next one,
Swine.
yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Is Ms. Swain out of custody?
He's in custody.
He's in custody. And then what about Kaylin Cameron? It's 10:53. Ms. Drain.
And their attorney not here on that case.
Kraus.
Yeah.
If there's no complainant, then I can still go forward and have the defendant waive his right to have an attorney present, if they are okay with that.
Okay. And next joint case.
Mr. Duhan, good morning.
Morning, Your Honor.
Do you have a waiver?
Yeah, I believe he's on the way out.
Okay.
Just next.
Yes. Okay, we'll do a 5-minute break to do the waiver. Ms. Frederick? Good morning. I'm okay, how are you? Who do you have today?
I'm just killing time between exams.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you know if Miss Drain is right in the hallway or not?
He should be.
1,000 personnel. We have also requested resources from out of state, as well as Northern California. Thank you to the first responders from Nevada, Oregon, and Washington State that are already on the road coming to LA County to assist. Lastly, the National Weather Service has predicted a continued red flag weather event with strong winds and low humidities, placing all residents of Los Angeles County in danger. To all of our viewers, please prioritize your safety as well as the well-being of those around you as we come together to continue to get through this widespread disaster. Los Angeles County firefighters will remain on the front line until we reach full containment, and we ask that you keep all of Los Angeles County in your thoughts and prayers. I would now like to invite up Los
Ready, Mr. Smith, please?
Thank you, Judge. Can you state your name for the record?
My name is Omar Reyes.
And what do you do for a living, sir?
I am currently the interim Deputy Chief Medical Examiner for Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office.
And how long have you worked at the Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office?
About 6 years.
And what is your role at that office?
I perform autopsies to determine the cause and manner of death.
And do you have certain education that allows you to do that job?
Yes.
And can you tell us about that education?
I'm a physician by occupation and forensic pathology by specialty. I attended medical school at Damascus University in Syria. After that, I moved to the U.S. where I did my residency training in anatomic and clinical pathology at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit. Following that, I did a fellowship in forensic pathology at the Medical College of Wisconsin and passed the board examination in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology.
And is that two separate board certifications?
Yes.
Okay, and can you just separate those out?
Yes, so I passed the board examination for anatomic and clinical pathology and the board examination for forensic pathology, so I'm certified in both.
And then, is that while you were working at the Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office?
No, before.
Okay, and then you started working there?
Yes.
And for the last 6 years, has it been your primary role, or one of your main roles is to perform autopsies?
Yes.
And are you currently practiced or licensed to practice medicine in the state of Michigan?
Yes.
And have you testified as an expert in this field before?
Yes.
Judge, at this time, I would move to qualify Dr. Reyes as an expert in forensic, anatomical, and clinical pathology.
Your Honor, I'm actually going to object. I don't see the relevance of Dr. Ray's testimony in this matter. We haven't heard anything that he's performed an autopsy. That would be the matter of his expertise.
Judge, I believe that as an offer of proof, Dr. Reyes is going to testify to a review of Messiah's medical records that he was provided, and his opinion as to those records. I can ask him if record review is something that he does as part of his job on a regular basis.
If you could.
Yeah. Doctor, in terms of performing autopsies and coming to your conclusions as to cause and manner, do you regularly review medical records associated with the decedent?
Yes, I do.
And is that something that can inform your opinion as to a cause and manner of death?
Yes.
And do you rely on those records in various cases?
Yes.
And were you asked to review medical records in this case?
Yes.
You did not perform an autopsy in this case?
No.
I would renew my qualification for Dr. Reyes, Judge.
I would be curious to know what was the date of the medical records that he reviewed for any relevance of the medical records to this matter.
Well, I think it is relevant because we provided offer of proof as to why the witness is on the stand regarding medical records.
I guess I can object when we get to that.
Right, when you
Understood.
object or on cross. So, yes.
Thank you, Judge. And Judge, at this time, too, I should have done this before I called them, I would move to admit people's proposed 18, which are the medical records from July 2014 to October of 2023 for Ms. Harris.
And at this time, I'm going to object to the admission of these records as irrelevant. They're through October 2023. The date of disappearance of Ms. Harris was January 2024. That's a 4-month period. I don't see how these are relevant to what might have happened in those 4 months. It's certainly not relevant to what may have happened on January the 9th.
And Judge, I think the defense's objection as to relevancy goes to the weight that this court can give those or not give those records, not the admissibility of those records, because while it doesn't encompass straight up to the January 9th, it does encompass a several-year period for her where, as again, an offer of proof, the doctor is going to say there was nothing life-threatening that he saw in these records.
I would agree. Overruled. So I would admit that's People's Exhibit 18?
18, Judge, thank you. And may I approach, Judge?
Yes.
Approaching with what's now been admitted as People's 18. Doctor, do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
And are those the records that you reviewed to come to a conclusion in this case as to the review of those records?
Yes.
And did you ultimately write a report as to your conclusions on your review of those records?
Yes.
May I approach it?
Yes.
I'm approaching with what's been marked as People's Proposed 42. Do you recognize that document that I handed you at Proposed 42, Doctor?
Yes.
And is that your report that you wrote after you reviewed the records in Exhibit 18?
Yes.
What's the exhibit number on that, Doctor?
Exhibit 42.
And at this time, Judge, I would move to admit People's Proposed 42.
And I'm objecting to this, Your Honor, specifically to the last paragraph in this letter. It assumes facts, not in evidence, where it says the cause of death remains unknown. There's not evidence of a death at this point. In terms of MRA 703, I don't believe that they'd be admissible pursuant to any expert testimony, because the expert testimony has to rely on facts in our data and evidence, and we don't have that. It's not, as far as I understand, Dr. Ray's job to declare death, and we don't have a declaration of death. We've seen no government, paperwork from any government agency making that declaration.
And Judge, I don't think that's required for the doctor to opine as to his opinions as to the medical records that he reviewed in this case. His qualifications allow him to do that. Those medical records are what he's talking about. Those medical records are admitted into evidence at this point, and the underlying data that he relied on is there, so that does comport with MRE 703 related to expert witnesses and opinions.
And of course, it's a little difficult because I don't see Exhibit 42, what the contents are. You're just speaking to the last paragraph?
The last paragraph, we believe, has been placed in evidence and is beyond the ken of Dr. Ray's expertise in this matter.
It mentions the cause of death?
Correct.
It says that the cause of death remains unknown, which, Judge, obviously Ms. Quake is getting to one of the main issues in this case and one of the big questions in this case that I anticipate is going to be a defense argument. And we will have that argument at some point, but for the purposes of this testimony, the data that Dr. Ray has relied on is in evidence, and certainly this court can take that document in the proposed exhibit for what it says and give it the appropriate weight.
I will give it the appropriate weight. We all know that that's one of the big issues here in this case. So I will admit it with your objection noted.
Thank you, Judge.
That'll be Exhibit 42.
Thank you, Judge. And Doctor, were you requested to do this medical record review by a certain agency?
Yes.
And who requested that?
Wayne County Prosecutor Office.
Okay, and after you reviewed those records, you wrote that report. Can you read the last paragraph of that report?
Yes. The last paragraph states, as we do not have Nazaya's body available for examination, the cause of death remains unknown. Her medical history reveals no life-threatening conditions, and her vaccinations were up to date.
And based on the records that you reviewed in that time period, did you see anything in there that would have caused Nazaya to die naturally?
No.
I have nothing further, Judge. Thank you.
I just have one. I just want to make sure I have the dates correct. You stated the medical records are from January 14th, 2023?
January 2014 to October of 23.
It's July 2014.
July 23, I'm sorry. It is contained in that exhibit. The
Okay,
dates.
can you just publish it?
Permission to publish.
Thank you.
Pardon my pitch, doctor.
Okay, thank you. Cross?
Thank you.
Hand that to Mr. Mike, please.
Good morning, Dr. Reyes.
Good morning.
So just to be clear, you are not Ms. Einhorst's treating physician.
No,
So you don't have any knowledge, no personal knowledge of Ms. Einhorst
no,
or any medical issues that she may or may not have had.
no.
Your role in this case was only to review medical records that were supplied to you.
Correct.
Your actual job is to perform autopsies, correct?
Correct.
Also, well, and an autopsy is examining a person who is deceased, right?
Yes.
And determining a manner of possible death.
Yes.
You can also interpret toxicology
Correct.
and lab results,
Yes.
that kind of thing. Is it your job to declare somebody as deceased? Typically?
Typically, I am the pronouncing doctor when we respond to a death on a scene.
Okay, so if you were to go and view something yourself
Yes.
and have personal knowledge of the circumstances surrounding the incident?
Correct.
Okay. So if you don't have a body, you can't really opine as to whether a person is in fact deceased, fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. No, you testified that you wrote a letter to the prosecutor in this case.
Yes.
And in that letter, well, what did you review in preparation of writing that letter?
I view medical records that were provided by the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office.
And those are just the medical records that, that you have been referring to?
Yes.
And is that all that you have reviewed?
Yes.
Do you have any other personal knowledge of the circumstances of this case?
No.
Okay. I don't have anything else, thank you.
Any redirect?
Nothing, Judge. Thank you.
Okay, you are all set. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
At this time, people will call Rion Green. Oh, before we do that, Judge. You just have a
Patricia? You on Johnson?
Judge, if I may just very briefly move for the admission of people's proposed exhibits 41, 52, 53, 54, 55, and 56, which are MSP records 1, 2, 3, 7, 9, and 10, under MCL 76611B.
And for purposes of exam, we have no objection.
It will be admitted.
Thank you. And at
41,
this time,
I'm sorry, I just want to repeat. 41, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56.
Correct.
Okay.
And then at this time, we would call Rion Green.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sweetie. Thank you, sweetie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Watch your step. Come back to the box. Okay. Also, you can pull that whole microphone off the ledge when you testify so we can hear you better.
Okay.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Could you state your name for the record?
My name is Rian, is my first name, Green is my last name.
And what do you do for a living, Ms. Green?
I am a forensic scientist with the Michigan State Police.
How long have you been a forensic scientist with the Michigan State Police?
I've been a forensic scientist for almost 4 years now.
4 years?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any, well, first, what is your primary role in, what division do you work in within the Michigan State Police Lab?
I'm in the forensic laboratory and I am in the biology unit, also known as BFI, which is body fluid identification.
And is that what you've done for the 4 years that you've been at MSP?
No, I've actually been at MSP longer than the 4 years. I'm sorry, it's been almost 4 years.
Okay.
But I've been with MSP for a little over 15 years now.
You've been in the lab for the last 4 years, or almost 4 years?
Correct.
Okay. And while your time in the lab, has that been spent on body fluid identification?
Correct.
And do you have any training or education that allows you to do that role in body fluid identification?
Yes, well, my education, I have a bachelor's in chemistry from Tennessee State University, and my training, I went through a body fluid identification scientist training, which included practice samples, mock samples, casework observations, lots of literature to read.
And how long, in terms of hours, was that training? Or how many training hours do you have in total for this body fluid identification job, if you know?
I'm not sure of the hours, but the training was from June of 21 to September of 22.
Okay, so quite a long training.
Yes,
And did you successfully complete that training?
yes.
And do you go through a recertification or retraining every year on an annual basis?
Not necessarily a retraining, but we do have proficiency tests that we do. We have 2 a year that we do, and they are yearly and they are mandatory.
And have you successfully completed all of those proficiency tests?
Yes, sir.
And are you currently working in the body fluid identification field?
Yes.
And how many different cases have you worked on to identify different body fluids that were submitted from law enforcement agencies in the almost 40 years you've worked there?
I don't have an exact number, but at least 100. I can say that.
At this time, Judge, I would move to qualify, or have you testified as an expert previously?
Yes.
In both in Wayne County and outside of Wayne County?
Just Wayne County.
Just Wayne County?
Yes.
At this time, Judge, I would move to qualify Ms. Green as an expert in the field of body fluid identification.
Any objection?
I would just ask how many times she's testified previously
Previously, as a scientist, 2.
as an expert?
Yes.
How many?
2.
2. Okay.
Yes.
No objection to this.
Okay.
Thank you. And first, can you describe what is meant by body fluid identification in general terms?
So body fluid identification is the examining evidence items for the possible presence of body fluids such as blood, semen, or saliva.
Okay. And do you use different tests to identify, let's talk about blood primarily.
Mhm.
Is there a test that you've used and used in this case to identify or determine if blood is possibly present on a piece of evidence that was submitted?
Yes.
And what is that test I'm talking about that better use? Or different tests?
So we can use different tests for blood in this instance. Primarily, there's a test called phenolphthalein. I can spell it if you need me to.
Please.
Okay. PhenolPhthalEin. And we refer to it in the lab as pheno for short, if that's easier. But that is essentially a two-step test that we use. It's a color change test to where if there is a possible presence of blood, it will turn a pink color. If there is not, or it's like an undetectable amount, it will not change color, basically.
And is there another test that you use specifically for blood?
We also have what we call hemosticks available, which are essentially strips, little plastic strips with a pad on the end that is also a color change test, but it's simpler to use. You touch it to a cutting of your evidence and it'll turn blue or it will not turn blue. And there's also a hemotrace test that we test for the presence of human blood.
Okay. And did you utilize those 3 tests that you've talked about in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of the pheno test, can you just describe how that process works, what you actually have to do to utilize that test?
Yes, so again, it's a two-step test where you have the pheno solution and you have hydrogen peroxide, which is the 2 components used. It's a 1-for-1, 1 drop, and you drop those onto the substrate, which is typically a cutting of a swab, or that's typically what it is, a cutting of a swab. You drop the 1, you drop the 2, and then it'll change to the pink color, or it will not. If it changes to the pink, we refer to that as a positive.
Okay. And that's for the presence of, or possible presence of
Possible
blood.
presence of blood, yes.
And then jumping forward a little bit, you described to determine whether there was human blood or not human blood. We call that the hemotrace, I believe?
Correct.
What's the process for that?
So the hemotrace involves actually a small extraction of a cutting of a particular stain. In this, for example, a particular stain, you extract it in the buffer solution that comes in the hemotrace kit for a set amount of time. And once that is extracted, you spin it down, you take the liquid, you draw the liquid off with a pipette, and there's a cartridge test, and it's similar, we read it similar to like a COVID test, where a set number of lines, like if the test line appears, then it's positive. If not, then it's negative.
Oh. May I approach Judge?
Yes.
I'm approaching with what's already been admitted as People's 41. And Ms. Green, do you recognize the document I just handed you?
Yes.
And is that a report that you authored that was relevant to this case?
Yes.
And first, what record number are you looking at there in your report?
This is record 7.
And what is the lab number associated with that?
MD 24-691.
And permission to publish Exhibit 41.
Yes.
And on the screen there, are you able to see that from your seat?
Yes.
And is that the same document that you're holding in your hand that's on the screen?
That is the same document, yes.
Okay. And just talking about the information on the top of that document right now, what goes in where under laboratory report? What is entered into that portion of the document?
So under the laboratory report section, we have the number, the investigating officer for the case, and their agency number, the record number, date received, time received, and the date completed.
And moving down to evidence reviewed, can you talk about what is listed in that section of these reports?
The evidence received section?
Yeah.
Yes. So these are the containers that I received under this record number for this submission.
And when you say container, what do you mean by that?
The container numbers on the left side there, can you hear me okay when I turn this way? Okay.
Yep.
The container numbers on the left are the container numbers that are given to the item when it's submitted into our laboratory.
And are those numbers, the container numbers, assigned by the law enforcement agency that submitted it or by the MSP lab yourself?
The container numbers are assigned by us, and when it's entered in our system, it gives it a sequential number.
And in terms of the agency number, though, is that also included in the evidence review?
The agency number is what the item numbers that the agency gives in their internal system, but we include it in our description.
And for container number 5, first, what was in container number 5?
Container number 5 is the black hoodie, sweatshirt style.
And what agency number was included for that submission?
Number 85.
And then in container number 6, what was in container number 6, the physical piece of evidence?
Was a pink bodysuit.
And what agency number was that associated with from Detroit Police Department?
Number 86.
Okay. And we're going to talk mainly about those two, but I do want to go through your interpretations. First, can we talk about what goes into the interpretations section of your report?
So in the interpretation section, this is where we report out our results for our body fluid testing.
Okay, and you talked about blood. Did you do a blood test on the first item that we're looking at here, the black hoodie?
Yes.
And did you also test for semen as well?
Yes.
And starting with the test for semen, what was your, first, what is that test called?
The test that I did was the acid phosphatase test.
And was there any, what was the result of that test?
It was negative.
Did not indicate the presence of semen on that black hoodie?
Correct.
And then moving down now to your next test here, what was the result? First, what was the next test that you did for?
The next test after this one that I did would be the phenol test. The way that it's listed here is not necessarily the order of the testing that I did. It's how, for some reason, that's how our system, our reports generate the report. So, but the next test I would have done on this would have been the phenol or phenolphthalein test.
And is that a blood, you described that as a blood test, right?
Yes, presumptive blood test.
And for the pheno test, what was your result of that test?
So there were areas that were not phenopositive and there were areas that were phenopositive.
Okay, and can you talk about that a little bit more when you say areas that were positive and not positive?
Sure. So I selected several areas on the entire surface of the hoodie, from the hood all the way to the sleeves, front and back, to test for the possible presence of blood, and I tested numerous stains. Not all of those stains were positive, meaning they didn't all exhibit a color change.
Okay.
Yes.
But some of them did?
Some of them did.
If you know how many did and how many didn't?
I wouldn't know exactly.
With looking at photos of that, be able to help you answer that question?
Looking at photos, yes, it was a lot.
Okay, we will come back to that.
Okay.
Going down to after the pheno test, what was the next test that you did?
On the hoodie, it would actually be, yes.
Let's just go down the list of the tests, if that's okay,
Yep.
as they're listed on here. So
Yep.
after the acid phosphate test, what's the next one then?
The next one will be the hemotrace test, which I did on the stains that were phenopositive. I decided to follow those up with hemotrace to test for the possible presence of human blood.
Okay. And pheno test doesn't differentiate between human and animal blood, correct?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's what the hemotrace is for.
The hemotrace will tell us, yes.
All right. And what was the result of the hemotrace test on the areas that were positive on the pheno test?
So I tested 5 areas with hemotrace, 5 of the phenopositive stains. And 3 of the stains on this hoodie were hemotrace positive.
Now, the next listed one is the hemostix test, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what was that test for? What was the reason you administered that test?
I did that one on the stains that were not as obvious. Sometimes you might get a weak phenopause, which is basically a very faint pink, and to kind of supplement the positive result to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing, I followed up with the Hemosticks, because sometimes it's easier to see. The Hemosticks has a yellow pad and it changes to like a deep blue when you apply the sample to it, so that's why I followed up.
As it's listed here, the Hemosticks test was positive, correct?
For the ones that I tested, yes.
For the ones that you tested, which, to be clear for the record, was not all of them.
Correct.
And you said that you tested the weak positives from the pheno?
Yes.
And did you only test weak positives from the pheno test?
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, yes.
All right. Now, going down to the next page on record number 7 here, there's a line there at the top of the page. Can you read that line and tell us what it means? Or the paragraph at the top of it?
Where it starts indicated?
Yeah.
Okay. So indicated the presence of human blood. Additional areas on this item were tested that did not indicate the presence of blood and or human blood. Additional areas on this item were tested that indicated the possible presence of blood.
And what does that mean, and why did you include that in the report, or why is that included in the report?
That sums up the results from page 1 for the Hemotrace, Hemosticks, and Pheno. The first sentence indicated the presence of human blood applies to the Hemotrace positive. Additional areas on this item were tested that did not indicate the presence of blood and or human blood. That was for the Hemotrace, the ones that were not positive with Hemotrace. Additional areas on this item were tested that indicated the possible presence of blood were for the pheno tested stains.
And in terms of after you conducted your test on the black hoodie, or your tests on the black hoodie, did you do anything to preserve more swabs for further testing by a DNA analysis?
After I did my testing, I went back and I selected 2 stains to send forward to DNA. So I swabbed those areas with 2 sterile swabs and cut those. Once they were dry, you have to wet the swab first. Of course, swab the stain, let it dry, and then the swabs were cut and tubed and sent forward to our DNA lab.
And what was the reason you didn't use the same swabs that you had already taken and tested with the pheno and Hemosticks and Hemotrace?
So with the hoodie swabs that I sent forward, there was enough of the stain there to where I wasn't concerned really with total consumption of that stain. So I didn't use the tested swab. I used fresh swabs to swab that stain.
And after you send those forward for analysis by another technician, are those individual swabs that you send forward given an identifying number to keep track of them in your chain of custody system?
Yes.
Okay. May I approach, Judge?
Yes.
I'm approaching with what's already been admitted as record number, or as admitted as 25, which is record number 8, testified to by Erica Anderson. Just looking at that report, Ms. Green, are your swabs that you sent forward listed on record number 8?
Yes, they are.
Just as it relates to item number, or container number 5?
Yes.
And can you read the agent, or the container number associated with the swabs you sent forward for item number 5 off of record number 8?
Okay. The container number or the item number?
Both.
Okay. The item number on here for item 5 would be MD 24-691-5 capital A lower D. Another set of swabs sent forward is MD 24-691-5 capital B lower D, and MD 24-691-5 capital C lower D.
And the first 2 ending in AD and BD are listed as black hoodie stain swabs, correct?
Correct.
And then CD is listed as a black hoodie swab?
Correct.
And what's the difference between those 2 things where you have stain swab and then just swab?
The AD and BD that are referred to as black hoodie stain swabs were swabs of the actual staining that I tested in that test, the pheno test and Hemotrace. The 5CD, which just says black hoodie swabs, are for wearer ID. That would be swabbing with 2 sterile wet swabs, the neck area, anywhere that would contact where the wearer of the potential wearer of the garment may have contacted, like the neck or sleeve cuffs. Yeah.
And those are the swab, so just swab that you sent forward was to identify who was likely wearing that sweater, correct?
Correct.
And then the stain swabs, were those swabs from areas that were tested positive for the pheno test and the hemotrace test?
Correct.
Okay. Now, going back to the exhibit that's on the screen, you did a test for a pink bodysuit as well, correct?
Yes.
And can you tell us the first test that's listed in your report and what that means?
The first test for the pink bodysuit, item 6, is acid phosphatase again.
And that's for semen, correct?
Correct.
And what was the result of that test?
Negative.
And then going down to the next test, I believe it's the pheno test.
Mm-hmm.
What was the result of the pheno test on the pink bodysuit?
There were areas that were negative for pheno, and then there was an area that was positive.
Okay. And did you do any further testing on the area that was positive?
This one, I did not do any further testing on the positive area. I just swabbed that and I sent that forward for
And
DNA.
what was the reason you didn't go further and do the hemotrace or hemosticks test?
Because it was such a small area, I was worried about sample consumption in my testing. And so I just sent, in this case, I did send the tested swab as well as an additional sterile swab of that same area to DNA.
And just to get that out of the way, are those listed on record number 8 that you have as well?
Yes, they are.
And which ones are listed there?
The pink bodysuit stain swabs would be MD 24-691-6, capital A, lower D. And the pink bodysuit swabs would be MD 24-691-6, capital B, lower D.
And those were sent forward for further analysis by someone else, correct?
Correct.
Going back, the regular swab, not the stain swab for item or container 6 that you sent forward, that was the same thing as the wearer ID that you talked about earlier?
For the wearer ID, it was the same process as the hoodie. I used 2 sterile swabs, swabbed the neck area, and because it was like a sleeveless item, I swabbed around where the arms would be in constant contact and the ankle cuffs. I think I said all the neck area as well, okay. The collar area.
And going down a little bit more quickly to item 7 now. First, what was that item that you processed?
Item 7 was a blood card that was submitted as a reference sample for Naziah Harris.
Okay. And what did you do with that swab in terms of processing and passing it, or sending it forward for further testing?
So no testing was done on this as it is a known sample. It was a blood card, so I cut a portion of one of the blood circles on there and sent it forward to DNA.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And may I approach Judge to retrieve those exhibits?
Yes.
And in terms of those 2 items, the pink bodysuit and the black hoodie, did you take photos of your testing as it proceeded?
Yes.
And did you provide those to the OIC of this case as well as the prosecutor's office?
They were provided, not by me.
Okay. And referencing the pink bodysuit specifically, the photos you took, do those fairly and accurately depict what you were doing and what you saw as your testing proceeded?
Yes, I take pictures before, as I receive the item fresh out of the package. I lay it out to get a full picture of the item, and I take photos after I mark it up with like my testing results and at the end.
And that's all put into a PowerPoint, correct?
Correct.
And that PowerPoint would fairly and accurately depict your observations as you move forward in testing?
Yes.
I would at this time move to admit people's proposed 64, the PowerPoint for the pink bodysuit.
No objection.
It'll be admitted as people 64?
And permission to publish.
Yes.
64. And just on the first slide here, first photo, is this just a cover sheet for the item that you did?
Yes.
Okay. Going to the second slide or second photo, can you just tell us what we're looking at here in this, on this slide?
So this slide in particular, I take pictures of the front and back of the exterior. If it's a clothing item, front and back of the exterior, and in this case, front and back of the interior, which is on a further slide. But this here, the top left picture, is the front exterior as if it was worn. So that would be, if you were looking at the person wearing it, that would be the front. And the bottom right picture is a close-up of the top half.
And if we could go to slide. And we're looking at the 10th slide. Starting with the top left, can you tell us what we're looking at there and what is listed underneath that top left photo?
The top left is the front exterior again, as if worn, and this was after testing, after pheno testing. And the one on the bottom right is a closer look at the top portion, I guess from like shoulder to torso of the garment.
And you have some words that you put it on the top right, indicating that there was pheno negative testing on this portion of it.
Yes, that was the key to, so when the viewers, such as yourself, would look at this photo and see the pH-N, that's our way of saying this was a negative stain and keeping track of the stains that I did test. So the pH-N means pheno neg.
Okay. And we go to slide 12. Sorry. And I want to focus on the bottom right photo here. What are we looking at in the bottom right of the 19th slide in the PowerPoint?
The bottom right photo is where the positive pheno stain was located. This would be the interior back portion of the item. So like inside here, I don't know if you can see, but like it would be interior inside I flipped it inside out to test those stains.
Okay, so what we're looking at here in the bottom right, that's inside out, so that's why we can see what would be the tag.
The tag, correct, yes.
And now could we go to slide 4? And this says on here pH-POS, does that stand for positive?
Positive, yes.
And so that area on the inside of if it was inside out, that area tested positive.
Correct.
For the possible presence of blood.
Correct.
Okay. And did you do the same sort of PowerPoint for the black hoodie that we tested, or that we talked about earlier as well?
Yes, I did.
And do those pictures that you took, were they put into a PowerPoint similar to this one?
Yes.
And do those pictures in the PowerPoint fairly accurately depict your observations as you're testing to move forward of the black hoodie?
Yes.
Move to admit people's proposed. People's proposed 44, so we got a little mixed up.
No objection.
It'll be admitted.
And permission to publish.
Yes.
And looking at the first slide of 44 that's on the screen, can you tell us this is just the same cover page?
Correct.
And going to the second slide here, what are we looking at here in this photo?
This will be the front of the black hoodie if worn.
And this is this before any testing had been done?
Yes.
I want to go forward to slide 7. And what are we looking at here on slide 7 of this PowerPoint example?
This is the hood area of the external portion, the external hood portion of the hoodie. I was trying to get accurate angles, that's why so many pictures, but
Okay. And is this, again, just standard overview before any testing had been done?
yes.
And if we go to slide 8. And what are we looking at here?
This is the interior portion that would be in contact, like if you pulled the hood over your head, it would be the area up here.
So you're looking at the inside of the hood
The
that
interior.
reflects the person's head.
Yes. Yep.
And slide 9. What in this photo are we looking at here, and has any testing been done at this point?
This is after testing. This is back to the front of the hoodie, plus obviously the sleeves. This is after ALS screening, which is alternate light source, which is used for screening for body fluids such as semen and saliva. I ALS the hoodie, and I marked those areas that had a fluorescence to them with a silver Sharpie, so I could further test after done screening. And IR, which is the infrared, is similar to, it's also an alternate light source, but it's more so for blood on dark items where the dark fabric would become lighter, and if there's blood or possible blood present, it would appear darker. That anything that I saw, I marked with a yellow paint pen with IR next to it, so I can distinguish between the ALS samples, the ALS areas that I saw, and the IR areas that I saw.
Okay, and we see a lot of markings on the front of this hoodie.
Yes.
Are you able to tell us, and I know you said the color, but what portion of this is the IR versus the ALS? And it may be easier for you to step down, although there's not really room over there.
So the ones that I observed with IR, I actually wrote IR next to them. I don't know if that's visible on there, given how small the picture is, but other photos, I took pictures of certain areas, yeah.
And if we could just go to the next, or if you could go to the. And so, for example, that on the front, as we're looking at it, left side of the zipper, that's where IR illuminated?
Correct, where there's, like where the icon, the hand, oh, it moved. Right there, and there's an arrow pointing to that large area, like those were areas that dropped out under IR, so I put IR next to it so I'll know what to follow up and how to follow up.
And that IR is to indicate for blood, correct? It's not a test for blood, but it's
a screening tool used to locate dark stains that may be possible blood.
okay. And if we could go to slide 20. And this is a closer view. Is this after you've done any other testing other than the light screenings?
Yes.
Okay, and what testing was done at this point based on this photo?
This is after the pheno testing was done. This particular picture is reflecting a phenopositive area. And it was also screened with IR. As you can see right over the swabs there, it says IR. And that's what led me to follow up with pheno, was because I saw it under IR and it was phenopositive.
And where is this, if you're able to say, on that hoodie?
So this would be, if I was wearing it, it would be in this area, the upper shoulder,
And for
bicep
the
area, yes.
For the record, the witness indicated to her right upper shoulder. Okay, right. You said shoulder. Are you saying that this picture was taken from the right shoulder area of the hoodie?
Correct. Like, I had to move the sleeve a little bit to get it in the picture with the ruler and the swabs, and it's like this area here. I call it the shoulder area.
We're going to look at slide 21. And again, can you tell us what we're looking at here? Then I'm going to ask you a couple follow-up questions.
So this is another phenopositive stain. This one is located on the rear of the sweatshirt, on the bottom right exterior of the sweatshirt.
And you had, in the last photo that we looked at, it said stain 20, and then this one says stain 28 in the text area of the slide. What is it, how do those stain numbers get assigned?
That is for my purposes, so I can keep track of how many stains I tested and what stains I tested. I know if I give it a number, it's just, I start from number 1 and I just go, it's a tracking system for me, so I won't double test the stain. And because we report out the number of stains tested in our system, so that's for me to keep track of how many stains I tested.
And if you know, how many stains were identified on the black hoodie?
I can't recall offhand.
I'm going to slide 22. And what are we looking at here for this photo?
We've just been listening to the third day of testimony and the preliminary exam in the case against Jarvis Butts. This morning, we heard from Detroit detectives, a medical examiner, and a forensic scientist. We'll continue our coverage of this throughout the afternoon on CBS News Detroit. Stay with us after this quick break.